please join me in welcoming director Tran, producer Jenni Trang, and our moderator Vivi Nguyen, the executive director of the Vietnam Heritage Center.
Well, what a film. Where do we even begin? Thank you for being here. So wonderful to see that the film was thoroughly enjoyed by the crowd, from your laughter, from your reactions. So Jenni, Ham, thank you so much for such a successful film. Where do we even begin? And if I can just share my initial impressions, you know, Maika, the film is so rich. It's so bright and vibrant, and it inspires, and just completely blown away by how much depth and how much entertaining value there is. But maybe to kick off, a question for you, Ham, as screenwriter and director of Maika, can you share a little bit about what inspired you to make Maika?
Actually, Maika is actually a remake of a TV series that was made in Czechoslovakia in 1978. And this is pre-ET even. And somehow in the 1980s, late 1980s, early 90s, it made its way to Vietnam television. And all the kids were blown away. They were just like, oh, what is this? There's a child who's like an alien, you know? And so there was a following. And so for every year, it would just show in the summer, and kids couldn't wait until summer so they could see this. And like screening rooms would like book the entire series and sell tickets to students to go and see this, right? So, and you know, and the kids, they were such fans that, you know, the alien, you saw a little clip of it in the film, the alien had a bowl cut, and they would go to the hairstylist and they we want the Maika cut, you know? And kids would name their, parents would name their newborn children, like, not Maika, or shops would be named Maika. So if you go to Vietnam and you see like a shop named Maika, and you're like, is this Vietnamese? No, it's not. It came from the TV show. Yeah, Maika. And so in 2018, I lost my mom. And I was filming in Vietnam, and she was sick in the States, and I had a chance to visit her, but I had to come back to finish directing a film. And then they said, no, you need to come back again because she's near the end. And I got on the plane and didn't make it back in time. And so I became super depressed, and I was like, oh, you know what, I'm working too far away from home, I'm living too far away from my parents, and maybe it's time to quit filmmaking and come back to the States and do something that can sustain me in the States so I can be closer to my dad. And the studio was like, no, you need to make films, Ham. You know, you're a good filmmaker. We need you. You know, and they said we have a film that would be very good for you. I was like, what am I gonna make? Like, I'm not in the mood. And they said, look, it's a synopsis, and it's the kind of story that we want to write. But you read it, if you like it, you can write it any way you want. And so they sent me the synopsis, and just from the first line, it says the story's about a boy whose mother passed away. And he doesn't know how to overcome his grief, but he meets an alien, right? And so in helping her, she helps him. I was like, I know this boy. I know this boy. I can write this script. So that's the inspiration, you know. And I actually put in it a lot of scenes. When I decided to make it, I knew I wanted to make it as a dedication for my mom. I wanted to make it a love letter to her. And so the scene where it's in the hospital, and the mother, you know, sniffs the boy's head, and she says, why does your hair smell so good? That was the last thing that my mom said to me. And I knew I wanted to memorialize. I wanted to sort of crystallize that moment. And so, yeah, so just making Maika really helped me overcome my grief. And, you know, it restored the child in me, you know? So, sorry, such a long-winded answer.
No.
Thanks, Ham, for sharing the personal connection, you to the film and the story. It's not anything that we would know necessarily from reading on the internet or watching the film itself. If I can move on to another question, and for you both, Jenni and Ham, how do you think, Maika, the film can help to change a child's perspective? And also, because Maika has been screening throughout this year, if you had any stories as to how children may have received the film, How do you look to inspire and promote change through Maika?
Yes, well, I would just say, well, first of all, home in the film is Ham. So we actually had some people react when we were filmed the screen the film in Vietnam, and they're like, "Wow, you know, we feel like the kid's perspective is very strong. Like, did you guys have like a kid consultant, you know?" And we're like, "No, it's this guy. He is the kid." but you know, I think that in Vietnam, I mean everywhere, but especially in Vietnam, there's not enough films about kids. You know, there's sort of like there's cartoons and like there's sort of like some series where there's kid characters, but a film that is just like a kid's film, there's not very many where the kid is a protagonist. So I think just having that is very empowering for children, you know, and one thing is like working with kids, you know, for me as a producer, you know, it's sometimes I forget, you know, that they're kids because they're so smart and they're so bright. But at the end of the day, they are kids, and we have to remember they need naps and, you know, fried chicken and boba. You know, that was a secret. Milk tea, boba tea, bribery works every time. But yeah, but I think that, you know, when for me, you know, we've both been in Vietnam for more than 10 years, and we both recently moved back to America. And we've made many films, and this is one of the first, you know, children's film. And to make a film for kids, with kids, it's a very different experience. It's very enriching, and to see it just really, it made me say "da," which just means like satisfying, but it's really it's more than satisfying. It's like
Fulfilling, rewarding.
Yeah, it's just like it's everything.
All
it's
the
like,
above.
It's cathartic, you know, like when we have screenings when there's kids and you hear them laughing, you know, and giggling, it's like the best feeling, you know. And I think that when we're able to make a story that brings the whole family together, and especially because the theme, you know, is not just an alien, but it's, you know, overcoming grief, talking about, you know, talking about it, and really like, you know, bringing these kind of issues and things that it's universal that everybody goes through, and having people talk, you know, just talk about what you lost, and just because you lost it doesn't mean that it's away, you know, it's still in your heart, right, wherever you go, right?
Well, I mean, the Mid-Autumn Festival, the Mooncake Festival, that's my favorite holiday in the world, you know? And I always wanted to, you know, tell that story, but then as I was trying to research and try to write the film, like come up with something that connects it all, and I was, oh my God, that's what the story is about. It's the story's about, you know, it's the mother who leaves her children. So it's sort of like, it's talking about like passing away. And I remember as a kid, like my deepest fear, like the thing that triggers the most is like watching a film and then the parent in the film passed away, and I go, oh, no, you know? And I get very traumatized by that because we don't have the skills that we're not taught to sort of like deal with that. And it hit me like, that's what the Mooncake story is. It's saying the mother leaves, but she's always there. She's always watching over the kids. And so if you have her in your heart, she's never gone. And the people that you love, and it applies to so many things. They're kids with friends, and they have to move away, and they lose all their friends. They lose their community. But the thing is that they're never gone. If you love them, they're always with you. And I felt like, wow, this story fits in the film, and it needs to be in the film. Not to mention it's culturally fun, and you get to hear like why we make mooncakes, and it's delicious, you know? So yeah, and I think that's the thing that we can take away is that you know, families, we need to just be there for each other. I think a lot of times, growing up, like I had a lot of trouble talking to my dad because he's very stern, you know, and my mom was always the sweet one. So when she left, it's like, how do I connect again? And it's really not that difficult. Like for parents and kids, you just have to be there for each other, you know? And the kids, they don't have to say anything. You don't, you know, when you're sitting with them, you don't have to say, tell me everything's happening. They don't need that. They just need you to sit there with them, you know? And so, yeah, so I hope that that's the lesson that we can, you know, the audience can take away with them.
Thank you for that, Ham and Jenny. And, you know, I think, thank you for bringing up that message, because the scene where, you know, Huỳnh is reminded that his mum would always be there with him, and that Maika, in a similar way, will never leave and will always be in his heart. I think there was quite a reaction from the audience for that, and you could tell that it touched the group here. I think the next question is very important in terms of the spirit and the focus of this film festival, Children's Resilience in Film Award by Shine Global. So we have to ask the question, what does resilience mean to you? And by the way, this is a question for the two of you. What does resilience mean to you? How do you define it? And how do your protagonists, both the characters in the movie as well as the actors and actresses, how do they demonstrate resilience?
Well, I mean, for me, resilience is about the ability to live with promise so that you can be in the present, to be in the moment. Because I think that, and that's what kids are really good at, and that's what makes kids really resilient, because they live in the promise, and they live in the moment. They react to everything to the present. Whereas adults, we carry all of our past with us, and we carry all of our sort of like our mistrust and all of our fears and everything with us. But kids don't react like that. They react to it now. And if you give them just hope, and it says, hey, tomorrow we could do this, tomorrow we could do that, they go, okay. They can bounce right back because they have hope. They live with the promise, and it's much easier for them to live with the promise. So that's resilience, and I feel like, for me, making this film, you know, you see it, it's the boy, and that was the boy, and it's me trying to, you know, overcome my grief, but just being with the kids and filming with them, they filled me with that energy and reminded me that, you know what, and this is, you know, in the moment, like with Home, one day we were filming, it was really sad. Here, I'll let Jenni tell the story.
Yeah, so again, you know, they're so talented, sometimes you forget they're kids. So we were shooting a very intense emotional scene, like the most emotional scene in the film. And all of a sudden, usually Home, our lead boy, he's always in character. He's always on. He's really amazing. But for some reason that day he couldn't focus. He couldn't get into character. He couldn't do it. And we were trying to figure out like what's wrong, you know. And then suddenly I remembered that it was his birthday on that day. And you know, we're on location shooting. We're in the middle of center of Vietnam, way in the hill, you know. And then I just realized like, shoot, you know what? And I pulled Ham aside. I was like, Ham, it's his birthday. I think he doesn't want to. I think he just wants to kind of like have fun on his birthday. You know, like he doesn't want to work. So we talked about it, and Ham's like, look, you know, I'm not gonna get this performance out of him. You know, we can't threaten him. We can't there's no real reasoning. You know, it's like if he doesn't want to do it, he's not gonna do it. Any kid, if he doesn't. For those of you who hang out with kids or our parents, if they don't want to do it, they're going. So we talked about it. At the time, you know, I probably should have called my executive producer, but I didn't. And so we just said like, yeah. Well, Ham was like, oh, we have no more light. I'm like, it's dark. Yeah, you're right. There's no more light. Yeah, you can't. It's day exterior. We're like, yeah. We think we have to, you know. So we gather everybody, and we basically, you know, we had already actually had a birthday cake ready for him, and then we just said like, hey, everybody. You know what? Today is Home's birthday. Let's all sing, and then we're like, and guess what? You're off early. Let's go party. And we made let's have a birthday party, you know. And then we just and the kids just lit up, and then we just like took the kids out to like eat, I think chicken and milk tea probably. And then you know just get like what Ham said, like living in the moment, you know, and you know these kids. Like, you know, it's not in Vietnam. It's different than in America, right? And where there isn't sort of like a set. There's not this long cinematic tradition. There was pre-war, but then after war, everything kind of restarted. So, when you see kid actors, they're not really like. They're not actors. They haven't been trained since they're young. They haven't been going to, you know, schools or beauty pageants. You know, they're really just kids that maybe their parents saw an ad for a commercial, or they're like, okay, let's just try it. And so for our kids, you know, our lead had done commercials. We'll tell that story later. Oh, well, yeah. Well, when we did Maika, but yeah. So Ham had worked on him before. We'll tell that story later. And then, you know, Cubeo, he was a stage performer, the chubby, yeah, I know, you can tell, right? He was one that Ham was mostly a little less, you know. Because, you know, he's so used to projecting. Yes. And we talk to the person in the back. Yes. After today, when you have internet, go on YouTube, and then you can, YouTube, see Gu Tin, Tin, and Tin Vietnam.
Tin.
You will see like videos of him when he was 4 years old, singing on stage and doing his own choreography. Phenom.
But talk about resilience. I mean, this kid, because his parents got divorced when they were very young.
Yeah.
So the things that he lived with his grandparents. So, you know, when we were shooting on set, his grandparents were the ones that were his guardians, you know? And so he wanted to work hard so that he can have, you know, make money for the family.
Yeah, he was the breadwinner.
Right? And then so that he could see his parents, because they were really busy working as well.
And we were shooting in central Vietnam, which is about no, at this time we were shooting about, I think, 6 hours away, or Vũng Tàu. When we were shooting at Vũng Tàu, it was about 2 hours away from Saigon. So he would be with us for the week, and then we would have a weekend off, and he would drive all the way back to Saigon to just do a show, because he would be performing. He still sang, and they couldn't give the show. So the salary that we were giving them was nothing compared to what he made for singing live. So this kid was just like 7 days a week performing, you know, like he is resilient, and he loved it, and he, you know, and then also the lead boy, he was also the breadwinner, and you know, his parents were going actually through a divorce when we're shooting, so there's a lot of like these sort of, and I think that's where they draw it from, you know, like, and it's just like, so back to basically seeing these kids, and they're coming in with no experience shooting, you know, 12 hours a day with some breaks, and a little different in Vietnam. And then, you know, and just like basically these adults were shooting like 6-day weeks, you know, and they're just amazing, and they just brought it every day.
They're very inspiring backstories. So glad you shared that. If we talk about, you know, genres and what Maika is as a genre, you know, I've often read a couple of references on the internet about Maika being the first Vietnamese family sci-fi film. Now, correct me if any of that is wrong, but what does that mean to you? And, you know, how do we think about Maika as a genre? And then I think, before I let you answer, I think I'll dovetail a comment into that, and that is, you know, it is still a bit daunting for me to be sitting up on the same stage with Ham as such an esteemed director in the Vietnamese filmmaking space, and Jenni as well, as I've learned about some of your movie titles. But Ham, Maika is not your typical genre, right? You know, I was much younger when I watched Journey from the Fall, for example, which is the untold story of the Vietnam War. Very different. So Maika is the first Vietnamese family sci-fi film. What does that mean? How do we think about it?
Well, I think the biggest thing is that every kid needs a hero. And like we're saying, there's not enough children's films, especially in Vietnam. And then for the Vietnamese in the diaspora, where they, you know, you see superhero movies, they don't look like them. So for us making Maika, we really wanted to give them a hero, like a real, like not just, you know, a real, like not just a kid and Vietnamese or Asian, and just to see themselves being the protagonist, right? And I remember like when we were in Vietnam, our first AD, first assistant director, her niece actually lives in Germany, was like born and raised in Germany, so she's like Vietnamese German. And she was in Vietnam for that summer when we released it. And then she went to see the film, and she's like 5 years old. And afterwards, she kept going around trying to like move things with her hands. It's very cute. And then she told her mom that she didn't want to go back to Germany. And her mom's like, wait, what? And then she's like, no, I don't want to go back to Germany because Vietnam has Maika, and Maika doesn't live in Germany. And then, you know, yeah.
Well, for me, I think that whether it's a sci-fi or any other genre, for me, I feel like it's a family story, really. Like the best sci-fis are about humanity, right, and how we treat each other, right, and so to see humans through the world of alien eyes, to see like how we treat each other. So, for me, and then all of my films have been the same. They're actually a lot of people have said that, oh, this is actually Journey from the Fall, because it's also about a kid. Journey from the Fall was about a family leaving Vietnam after the end of the Vietnam War, and they came over to the US as refugees, so they're carrying all of that with them, and the family doesn't know how to move on from that traumatic event. And so Maika is still the same story, because it starts with a traumatic event, and it's about the child who's trying to overcome that. Yeah.
But with fart jokes.
That's great. Appreciate the explanation. And I think, you know, we're getting tight on time here, so I think I'll hand back over to Alex to open up the floor for Q&A from our audience here today.
How was it directing children And how old were they?
Home was 7. Bean was 6, I believe. Yeah. He's 6. So that's Gobel, 6 and 7. He was just turning 7. Maika's a little older. She was 8, right? But shooting them, filming with them was not that bad. It was COVID that was bad. So we filmed during COVID, and so
we started before COVID, and then COVID.
We started before COVID, and then after I think 3 weeks of shooting, it was monsoon season. So Bana Hill, the scene where they were up in that castle, sort of like steeple, that scene was shot in 3 different cities. Because we were supposed to have 3 nights there, and after the first night, the second day, the fog came in and the storms came in. So at 5 p.m., like you could not see like 6 feet away. Right? And so we're like, okay, we can't shoot this. We're just gonna have to wrap up. So they said, monsoon's coming. You can't shoot until it passes. And I was like, when is that? December? We started in August, right? So like it's by September, we were like, oh no, you have to stop. So we had to stop, and I didn't believe it. I was like, no, come on. And so I would tell the guy, you have to take a photo for me as proof. And he went outside, he would take photos, and there were floods like up to their knees in Da Nang, right? And so we waited until December, but then my cinematographer was busy on another film. So he said, oh, don't worry, we'll just come back after January. In February, we can shoot again. February 2020 comes around.
Oh, wait, so before that, we had that is Lunar New Year. So, in Lunar New Year, in here, it's like a weekend. In Vietnam, it's like a month off. Like, if you want to do anything, people are like, I call it Tet zombies. They kind of like walk around. They just want to gamble and drink.
No. But so they shut down. So we stopped and waited 4 or 5 months. And they're kids. They're 6, 7-year-olds, so they grow up fast. They're just together. We're like, what do we do? And so the first chance we got was in March. So we're like, okay, let's shoot again. But we couldn't shoot in Da Nang because that was the city that was shut down because of COVID. The first city in Vietnam that was shut down was Da Nang, where we were shooting, because of 2 Chinese tourists, and they just went everywhere we shot.
Chinese
so
tourists.
Every location we couldn't go back, right? And so we're like, okay, so let's go to Saigon. We'll just have to shoot everything in Ho Chi Minh City. And so we started shooting Ho Chi Minh City, and after 2 days, it was shut down because of COVID. So like, oh my God, like this thing won't stop following us, right? Let's go to Vũng Tàu. It's this beach town. Okay, it hasn't gotten there yet, so we went to Vũng Tàu. We reset the whole scene. We built it this one place. And then we shot for 5 days, and then COVID came. So we had to shut down again, and then wait another, this time it was a serious lockdown. We waited until August of 2020. And we shot for like 4 more days just to wrap everything up. And then we had to rebuild the house, rebuild the set, everything there.
In the studio.
In the studio. Meanwhile, so when we started home, was a little bit taller than Maika, right? And then when we finished, she was like this.
She also lost teeth, and then grew teeth. And
so if you really pay attention, you can actually see the difference. But we were hoping that the hair would sort of mask everything.
And she's an alien, so it happens,
Yeah. But to answer your initial question, working with the kids is actually really easy, because the thing is like, for me, I never talk down to them. Right? Because a lot of directors in Vietnam, they're commercial directors, and they go, you have to smile, you have to do this, and you have to do that. And I never tell them how to do something. I just explain the situation to them and ask them, what would you do if this happened to you? Because the imagination's so much stronger for children than it is for adults. So if they can just see what's happening, if they understand the scene, then they can react, and they bring what they carry with them to the shot, to the screen. So yeah.
And Ham has this great ability to the scene will be going on, and he'll be like, wait, the sound, it feels wrong. So he'll ask, the kid, and like, wait, how would you say it? Because it's like, Ham wrote it as a dapper young man, and then we translate it into Vietnamese, and then we sort of have our local friends, because we're both Vietnamese American and fluent, but of course we have for our locals Vietnamese to make sure it's like really the right, authentic. But then it's still an adult, right? So then it's sort of like, kids, just like in any language, kids speak a little different, So we have the kid, he has the kid like, how would you say it? You know what I'm trying to say, so what would you say,
Yeah, so they said that. So there's one, Maika was like, how does this look? And it says, oh, it looks beautiful, right, in English. And we translate, oh, not a dep, right? And then I'm like, this doesn't sound right. How would you say it? He goes, dep gay loom, right? It was like, that's scary beautiful. You know, it's like it's
Slang,
gorgeous.
kid
It's
slang.
Right? It's gorgeous, and so yeah, so things like that.
For amazing film. Thank you so much for bringing it here, and so many emotions that you were able to capture, and working with kids is. You say it's easy, but it's not, and you really brought out so many emotions and so many amazing feelings that you were able to translate. So thank you for doing that. But I was curious. Sci-fi's tough. You said it was your first film, and probably the toughest thing is like, what do the aliens look like? I mean, it's so hard to make something original in sci-fi, and so much competition. And you had a reasonable budget, but it wasn't the Avengers. So when you looked at special effects and you conceptualized what she would look like, how she would come about, and by the way, brilliant that you turned her human right away, which is great. But
you noticed that, huh?
Yeah, that beautiful image of her as her original alien self and the color of the circle, the ball, the powers. Was there an inspiration for that from a film, or how did your production designer and you come to that?
The design was like months of trying out different things, and I had a friend who, because I wanted to keep it organic, because that's the thing with, because Vietnamese audiences, they don't watch sci-fi. So if you have something that's too alien, like literally alien, they won't get it, they won't connect to it. So I wanted to have something that also kids can connect to. So I didn't want it to be like scary looking aliens or sort of like gray aliens or things like that. And then I wanted something really organic, you know? And I love jellyfish, and I was like, jellyfish are just so beautiful and organic and they're flowy. And so I said, okay, she needs to be something very ethereal, very, you know, and to have all those colors for her. And I love the color purple because it's a color of strength, right? And I said, okay, we should have something like that. And by the way, this is all done in Vietnam, like everything, from the sound design and from everything. But, and so not just to have the image, the visuals of Maika, so you could see, you know, she's very ethereal and very jellyfish-like, and the ship is very translucent and has all those colors. But more importantly was the feeling of Maika. What was the vibe of Maika? And at the time, you know, I was doing a lot of meditation, and sort of, and I always meditate to this one frequency that brings you back to your heart, right? That just settles you and calms you. And so I felt like, okay, and that's where the inspiration from vibration, that's the whole concept of her as an alien, is using sound, right? Using sound to calm, using sound to levitate and all this stuff. And there's actually progress in that field as well, scientifically. But if you watch it again, you'll hear it. Every time Maika appears, you hear that, so that your heart settles, right? And so it brings us back to center. And the thing is that I feel like kids are really good at meditation, to be honest. Like, you think that, oh, they're just full of energy and jumping around. But actually, when children are taught to meditate, they can actually just sit down and just come back to center really easily, yeah. So that's the concept of the alien, though. And we didn't have the budget to be like, you know, Avatar or anything like that. So we wanted to just keep it more about the family and the characters.
So I think we have time just for one or two more questions.
So in the beginning, you mentioned this was based off the Czechoslovakian series. So the question is, did this movie encapsulate the entire series, or was it just a piece? Because I saw it so that more Mike is coming soon, so I'm really excited about that.
Well, we're hoping that we can make a prequel, and that's the reason why there's, you know, sort of like very cryptic and where that little piece of the alien came from, and it was basically the precursor, right? And when she first appeared, when Huỳnh first meets her, she's speaking Czech, right? So that's why, yeah. Did you know that? Did you get that? Did you get that? Okay, good. But it's a remake. It was Czechoslovakian. You were right. So yeah, we did plan to have a sequel, but then, you know, it all depends on whether the film does well and we find an audience for it. Yeah.
And the thing is with like kids movies, it has to be like Harry Potter. Like you have to kind of do all three at once. Otherwise, if we do a sequel, you know, they'll be teens and not as cute. different genre. So that's why we were thinking, okay, we could do a prequel. It's like, where did Maika come from? Who's her comrade? You know, who's her friend that was there before? So you kind of can get away with it a little more. Yeah.
Last question.
It's actually not a question. It's just a reaction that I had in seeing the film and the heart that's expressed in the film. It reminds me of a quote I recently heard that was attributed to Dr. Seuss. Don't cry because it's over, smile because it happened. And the idea of love enduring and you know, how we integrate our losses and somehow we're strengthened by them and we go on despite them. Thank you so much.
Oh,
Thank you.
Susan. And thank you, Shine Global.
Thank you so much, Shine Global, actually. Before you guys leave, can we take a selfie together?
Yeah. Sorry, I should have done it earlier when we had more.
We should have done it
Yes.
earlier.